Welcome to another round of Coffee and Donuts. If you don't know who I am, I'm Frank McGaha. I'm a former federal law enforcement officer and now a full-time law enforcement instructor. And this is Coffee and Donuts, where I answer your questions about the police hiring process, the academy, or the career in general for becoming a law enforcement officer. We have 3 pre-submitted questions. I'm excited about them. Let's discuss. Before we get started, if you want your questions answered, we answer every question over on YouTube. We get around to all of them, and even now on our new blog, and you can find the link to those in the description. So if you want your questions answered quick, that's the easiest and fastest way for us to get over. Otherwise, let's jump in. I like these questions. They're more in depth than typical, so I like it. I started a self-assessment part 1 on the NTN. For those of you that don't know, that's kind of out west, Washington State, California, some departments I think in some northern states use them, but it's the National Testing Network Frontline Test for law enforcement. It's a third-party company that has contracts with a lot of states to run their written exam prep. So I started the assessment part 1 on NTN, but I fear if I'm not honest on the polygraph and the screening, my answers won't match and I will be DQ'd. Are the poly answers compared to the self-assessment test on the NTN? The simple answer to this is yes. Everything that you fill out in the entire hiring process is compared to one another. But I think you might be kind of off a little bit on this, and it just depends. So the self-assessment on the NTN, sometimes, first of all, I don't even know if that's even a requirement all the time. That's when you're doing a self-assessment, and I believe you're talking about just creating your profile, unless that is a requirement part of the test that your department is requiring. And if it is, you need to be honest on both. If your answers aren't going to match up, then you're not being honest somewhere. And being honest is, you just, like I said, don't worry about being honest and having a hurdle there. As long as it's an articulable factor and it's not something that is an immediate disqualifier, you're good. You just have to articulate it the right way. And what I mean by articulating, I'm not talking about legalese here where you're trying to manipulate the wording. No, you just be specific and don't elaborate, and you only articulate the facts of the situation. A situation with that would be, have you ever consumed an illegal substance? You would say, hypothetically, you'd say, yes, I've consumed marijuana approximately 30 times in my entire life. Last use was in 2004, right? There you go. That is properly articulated. That's the way that I would do it. Or, last use was 2020 or whatever it was. Going into detail is, oh yeah, I did consume marijuana a few times, but it wasn't my fault. I was around my friends and they peer pressured me into. No, none of that. All that's perspective. None of that matters. The facts are A, B, and C. So do not lie. Don't lie. Because when we find out, and we will find out, you're going to not have to worry about not getting hired with this department. You're going to have to worry about not getting hired with any department, because we will tell every department that reaches out to us that you lied and omitted information. So I'm not saying you would do that. I'm just saying be honest, but be specific. Don't elaborate. Just tell the facts of the situation and answer the question. Don't go into some perspective detail that has I need to explain myself. No, you need to tell the facts, and if they want to know more, they'll ask about it. And then at that point in time, you need to be able to articulate just the facts with additional detail. All right. That one's an interesting one. If anything is ever different. Actually, I was just on a call with someone yesterday on this, and he filled out multiple applications, and then in one of them he was unsure about a certain number of a certain situation. And on multiple applications, it was the same number. He changed the number one time on one application. Every department moving forward is like, why is this? And it's a completely different department. He's like, why is this application number different than all these? And now they're looking into the fact that maybe there was omission. And it was just because he just made a simple mistake. That's it. Made a simple mistake on the document, and now he's over here having to fight another hurdle. So stay away from that. All right, next question. What is the best way to study when an agency does not offer any study guide? There are two agencies that I've applied for in Oregon, and they did not offer a study guide, and I failed the test, which sucks. I'm just not entirely sure what's the best way to pass. I've taken study guide practice tests online, but I still end up failing. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Yeah, so first and foremost, with that study guide, and or the practice test, and I would get a new one. I would take that and I would see what questions you get wrong and I would circle them. And then I'd take another study guide practice test and see what questions you get wrong and I would circle them. If they're the same thing, like reading comprehension or vocabulary or writing, then you know that that's the area you need to focus in. But for the most part, just studying is exactly, even if they don't have a study guide, you can reasonably assume that every written exam for law enforcement is going to have the three core components: reading comprehension, writing, and vocabulary/grammar. If you study those aspects, you're going to do really well. Now, some add extra things in it. The Pellet B up until recently had the closed section, but they've gotten rid of that. The NTN has its scenario section. Other tests, if you're looking at special agent, have a logic reasoning section. But they all are based on reading comprehension, vocabulary, and grammar. Some have math sections. It just depends. Understand almost every written exam is pretty much at a 10th grade level. So you should be able to handle, even if you've been out of school for a while. I would get study guides, and I would get two and see if I'm getting questions wrong that are similar. And then once I know that if those are the same thing, then I would just study. The other aspect is maybe some of the jargon is not familiar to you. When you hear suspect, or when you think victim, or you hear, patrol route, or any word that might be similar to law enforcement function, and I don't want to say jargon, but common law enforcement terminology, then I'd go through law enforcement terminology. That's something when we designed our online courses, right, was something that we focused on, was kind of a law enforcement dictionary, so that individuals would know common law enforcement terminology and their meanings and definitions. But yeah, I would not stop studying. I would just focus on the three core fundamentals. Like I said, reading comprehension, writing, vocabulary/grammar. All those are going to be on the exam. That's what I would be focusing on, and I would try to identify where I'm messing up. But yeah, that would be exactly where I would start. And then I'd have a good study plan where I'm studying at least a minimum twice a week leading up to the test, and then a couple days before the test, kind of taking some time off, mentally decompressing, and then just going in as properly prepared, hydrated for that test on that day. So it's not just a cut and dry, like, hey, follow this study guide and you'll pass. No such thing. You got to put in that effort, and I know you can do it. People do it every single day, and if they can do it, you can do it. Just go out there. There's a lot of content out there where you can go to a department and get an open resource study guide. Even though it might not be specific to that department, it still has those core fundamentals. We package a lot of reading comprehension, writing, and vocabulary in our online courses, but the main purpose is like I said, to hit those core functions. So hope that helped. Next, just did my interview, went great. Congrats, good to hear. Now I have to fill out my background and once again, getting back to the grammar, y'all. Okay, just did my interview, went great. I have to fill out my background, and I'm having issues filling it out due to not knowing or having contact with family members. Due to them distancing from family and others passed away. All right, I think I know what this question's asking. So you're saying that you have to fill out your PHS, your background packet, and on it you have individuals that you just don't have information for. So individuals that no longer have contact with the family, or you no longer have contact with them, or individuals that are deceased. So first and foremost, make sure you're reading the directions properly, right? A lot of times they say, hey, you need to put immediate family members down. Well, that's not a cousin or an aunt or an uncle or anything like that, unless it specifically asks for them. But when, if you're talking about parents or something along those lines, or grandparents because they were your primary guardians, and they're deceased, there's usually a box on every PHS to mark individual as deceased. So I would look for that. If not, then I would just write in there when it says address. I would just write, name of the person, date of birth. I would just, in one of those lines, I would just write deceased. As for individuals that don't have contact with the family, you just need to be clear and articulate that as well. Hey, I haven't spoke with my sister or my brother in approximately 10 years. We due to XYZ, or just, hey, here's all the contact information I have for them. I haven't spoke to them in approximately this amount of time. And that's it. That's a full stop. You don't need to go into too much detail from there. I would, put down the information that you reasonably assume is correct. Don't put down information that you know is wrong, that you know is old. Like a phone number that you called, 3 years ago and it was changed and it was no longer, your family member's phone number. Don't do that, because that's misleading and you'll get DQ'd on that. But if you can talk to another family, hey, do you have, John's phone number and address? You can get it, put it down if it's required, and then just be clear to your background investigator, hey, I haven't had contact with this individual. I don't even know where they are in life. I don't know where they live, yada, yada, yada. This is information that was provided to me by another family member who I believe has had contact with them recently. And that's it. If you go into more detail than that, you're getting into hearsay. If you go into a situation where you say, oh, I haven't talked to so-and-so because so-and-so, got in trouble with the law, and I think it was for burglary, but you don't know, you're not 100% sure. Don't state all that. Just state the facts. Hey, I haven't spoke with, so-and-so due to the fact that they got in trouble with the law. They spent some time in jail, and I haven't spoke with them since then, and when they got out, they moved away. Or if they're still in jail, whatever. Just make sure you make it clear that you have limited information and you have no desire to acquire that information, or I shouldn't say to acquire, but to contact that individual. So that's the simple way. Now, if individuals won't have contact with you, you just state that, hey, I've reached out to so-and-so. I've been unable to make contact with them. But that one's fairly simple too. So once again, if you want your questions answered, you can leave them down in a YouTube comment, or you can go over to our new blog, and that's on our website, armageddonct.com. and click on our blog, and any of our posts, leave any comments there, and we get to those first, as well as over on YouTube. I hope this helps. Stay safe, and I will see you next time.